I asked writers on Twitter about their least favorite tropes and cliches. Welcome to CC Writes. My name is CC Lepke, and today we are going to discuss writing sins according to practicing writers. Tropes or cliches don't necessarily have to be bad. There are instances where a good writer can use a trope or cliche in a completely fresh new way. Conversely, there are also instances where, with older books or stories, a writer will have used a story element that at the time was completely new, but in our current perspective, it's now overdone. It may have been popularized by the original book, but right now, if we were to read the story, it would seem tropey. Today's video is only looking at story elements that, if written today, would seem excessively tropey. I'm expecting some really good things here, and maybe even one or two writing sins that I've committed in the past. Wouldn't it be embarrassing if I committed all of them? So then, let's get started. So Jasmine Duchesne says, "I hate love triangles." And then she included a GIF that says, "Pick one and go with it." I think this is absolutely true. Love triangles is a really stupid thing to put into a story. All it is fantasy for the writer. Like, everybody wants to feel like they're loved, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that you can't make a decision on who you're in love with, or that you have people fighting over you and that's how you know you're really loved. It's the worst kind of romance fantasy that there is, and there's not really anything endearing about it. It's usually really petty, and you see it in a lot of mainstream content, like you see it in Twilight, and I'm not bashing Twilight here because I read Twilight and I did enjoy it, but you have these stories where all of these people are fighting over one person, and it just makes the person who can't make a decision about things look really just annoying, for one thing, because there aren't a lot of people who have ever actually had more than one person fighting over them. And then you add on top of that, the personalities of the characters in these situations are rarely ever good enough that you would think, oh yeah, they definitely deserve to have people fighting over them like that. I don't know, maybe it's just me being catty, but yeah, love triangles are absolutely the worst, and I completely agree with this sentiment. Inu of Zuna says, "Don't know if this happens in books too much, but the main male and female hooking up at the end. Even if they have better chemistry with someone else, they're the leads, so they have to wind up together in the end." This is very true. There are a lot of stories where the main characters end up together, and at the end you're just left thinking, like, why them? There'll be all of these other side characters that, they possibly could have ended up with, or they could have ended up with nobody at all, because that's also an option. But because they're, the main people, for some reason, they have to be together in these stories. And it really doesn't make very much sense. I think Miyazaki, the person behind Howl's Moving Castle and all of the Studio Ghibli awesome content that there is, he actually has a statement where he talks about where he'll have male and female characters together, but won't necessarily make them end up together in the end, because sometimes when people are together, what needs to happen is they need to use each other to grow together as human beings. And his films are some of the most beautiful, most classic stories of our generation. So there's evidence that it works a lot better if you go based off of the character and their growth as a human being rather than just, well, they're a guy and a girl, so I guess they should just, marry each other in the end because that's what we do. So yeah, this does not make any sense, and I'm so glad that somebody brought it up. Rachel Bross says unskilled hero has a sort of montage where he becomes super skilled in like a week. And yes, this is absolutely hilarious. There's this, and then there's also the element where somebody just kind of starts off being good at everything, the Mary Sue type character, and both of these scenarios are awful. Realistically, it takes people a long time to develop a skill unless the skill isn't that hard to acquire, in which case, why are you writing a story about it? So I definitely really enjoy stories where a person actually has to put in the effort, or they have all of this time where they're not good at the thing that they're doing, and little by little they're improving their skills until at the very end of the story they finally reach this part where they're mildly competent. And those are usually the stories that are better if you have like a long series occurring over time, to where in each book they develop their skills and then at the very end they become this like master of their craft and the person that everybody looks to emulate that. So yes, the person, the silly montage where somebody almost immediately gets good at the thing that they need to win in the end. That's a frustrating thing because it's not something that the reader can connect to very well. M. Blankenship says, it's not necessarily a cliche, but I hate when a character gets severely wounded and they just seem to magically bounce back from it immediately. Yes, you see this in so many action movies. It's ridiculous, where somebody gets shot and are bleeding out, and then for some reason they're able to just like run and walk through everything in the end. One of the best examples I have of a story where somebody gets hurt and then actually follows it through to the end, where they're limping and struggling and losing blood but still having to keep going, was Escape from New York. That movie is absolutely hilarious and is one of the best examples of somebody actually following through with that instead of just like getting stabbed in the chest and still plowing through as if nothing is wrong. It also happens in a lot of stories, and I even understand why it happens in a lot of stories, because this is something that I've had to deal with in the current work in progress that I have. And in my whip, there is a character who she punches a wall in the beginning and just completely brutalizes her hand. And throughout the story, I kept forgetting that her hand was injured. So she was doing all of these things, even though she has like a scraped up bloody hand I'm pretty sure she at least sprained her wrist in the beginning, and kept completely forgetting that ever happened. And so sometimes this can be just like a mistake of memory, but it is something that when you're going through and editing your story, you have to pay attention, because it's unrealistic to think that this person would be, climbing a wall with a broken hand. You just don't want to see that happen in a story, because people will read it and just be like, well, what about this? And there is no good answer for that. You just shouldn't ignore the fact that somebody's been injured, and it increases the drama in the story if the person remains injured throughout. Oh, okay. Satiros Bricado wants to reboot this timeline, is the name of the person who said this character had a big dramatic death scene and now they're miraculously back from the dead. I completely agree. The whole trope of somebody coming back to life, or they, didn't die in the first place. You see it in a lot of comic books and soap operas and things like that. But you also see it in stories quite a bit where, one of my favorite things to do while watching a movie is if you don't see a person actually die, like if you don't physically see, their body hit the ground and then be completely unmoving, or like somebody actively shooting at them in the head, whatever it is that killed them, that person is never dead. and it's such a stupid thing to include in a story. Like if you take that away, a lot of times it takes away the actual motivation of the story. And you really don't want to take away a motivation. You want that to remain permanent in your story. And a lot of people, they'll have a character that they like and they'll be like, well, I can't kill this person. Kill the person in the story, not in real life. You have no idea how powerful it is to actually remove completely a character from a story, because the readers, usually they expect nobody is dead permanently, or nobody is going to die until, at least the very end of the story. If you kill off a character in the very beginning, you throw the reader completely off. It makes everything feel real to them, like at any moment the main character could die. And if you do that, the tension in the story and the motivation for the main character feels so much more tangible. And it will make it so that the reader is always wondering, well, is this character going to die in this situation? Or is the main character, going to die in this situation? And that is such a great story element. So don't feel afraid to kick out characters, even if you absolutely love them, because sometimes that is the best thing that you can do to make a story even more powerful. Diana Marag Purves says, rape as a motive for revenge. This is such a pet peeve of mine. In stories, they call it fridging a character, and it usually happens to women, where it's basically the damsel in distress situation, or it'll be where basically the girl gets hurt, or she gets captured, or like what Diana says, rape occurs and it motivates the main character to perform activity X. This is not necessary at all. It's like, surprise, women have external motivation that occurs outside of our bodies. There are other things that can motivate us personally aside from not wanting to be raped. We struggle to pay our bills. We want to feed our families. We want money. We want all of the same things that male characters do. And you don't have to have us be raped for us to struggle with the world. We struggle enough as it is. And one of the things that we do struggle with is the fact that a lot of people assume that everything in our lives has to do with our bodies. The fact that we're angry means we're on our period. The fact that we're sad means that we're on our period. The fact that we feel anything at all means that we're on our period. Literally every single time I talk to my parents, I can tell them, oh, I have a headache, or, I'm not feeling very good today, or maybe I couldn't get up the motivation to go do stuff and I just want to have a lazy day. And the response is always, oh, are you pregnant? Everything that we do does not have to do with our bodies. Sometimes things just happen. And so, yeah, this is such a huge pet peeve of mine, because women, there's so much more to us than just what our body dictates, that seeing it in a story where you have us like getting captured, or getting captured to motivate the main character, or raped to motivate the main character, or raped to motivate ourselves. We don't need that. There are significantly less severe things that you can do that would push us onward. And honestly, having a story where the only point of the female character is to get captured so that the main male character can be motivated to do something, not only is it cliche, but it limits the story. Women can provide so much to a storyline. The great thing about men and women is that we have the ability to work together, and because we do have a different perspective on the world, and we do have different things that we tend to be a lot better at than men are, and things that men are a lot better at than we are. And that changes from person to person, because men and women can be really good at different things, because there are female bodybuilders who are a lot stronger than men who, sit all day at a computer doing IT. Like, you have all of these dichotomies of what we're capable of, and if you combine characters who have complementary skills, it doesn't matter whether they're male or female, they can build each other up in the story and make it so much better than if you just have the motivation be like, oh, I'm a girl, I got captured. That's so dumb. Please don't do that in a story, ever. It really sucks to read it. It really sucks to watch it happen. Probably my favorite thing that has ever happened was with the Avengers movie, where Hawkeye was basically the damsel in distress the entire time, but was still, a very formidable foe, was, had all of this ability to really mess up their plans and make it hard for them to overcome him, even though he was just, the damsel in distress in the story. If they did that more with females, where they are the damsel in distress, but still are strong enough to, make decisions and to create powerful elements in the story that push the story forward, that would make me so much happier than where it's just, the fair lady locked in a tower. I really hate this one. It's so bad. So that's all of the tropes and cliches that I'm going to go over today. There were some really good ones, and I do have to say, there are situations where I have done some of these same things. Like, I have written stories with a love triangle in the past, and if you do any of these things, please don't take this personally, because, we are all on a path to grow as writers, and at some point, each of us has to go through these growing pains to become a really great writer. And I think one of the things that makes me feel better about my writing now is that I'm able to recognize how significantly bad these tropes are, so that those are the ones I'm not going to include in my story later on. Although, truth be told, there are probably still a lot of bad tropes and cliches that I use even now. And that's okay, because it's something that I'm using now that later on I'm going to grow past. And you should feel encouraged by the same thing. We don't have to live by the same standards of writing that we had in the past. And that's really exciting. Thanks for watching CC Writes. I hope you enjoyed your time with me today. If you'd like to support my work, then you can find my books on Amazon.com. You can also support me by making a donation to my Patreon page. There are links in the description below. For more daily content about my life, my thoughts on writing, and my dog, you can follow me on Twitter at @CCLepkeWrites. Finally, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification button so you'll know when the next video comes out. See you later.